water, but I'll take that. I'll take it.
You can never have too much
Appreciate that.
water. I'm gonna fill mine up. Or do you give me a
Madam Chairwoman.
I won't open it until I need it. How about that? That way, if you need another shot. Okay. Yeah, you survived last time.
Okay. And Madam Chairwoman, I kind of ran the first one just because it was our first one, but I'm handing over the reins
Okay.
to you today.
We are ready. We are all here. I'd like to call our redistricting commission meeting to order at 4:04, and want to thank all my fellow commissioners for being here, but also welcome those who are viewing on broadcast or on YouTube or on Zoom. Welcome and thank you all for your time and attention. What is really important to us, as it was stated, is that we are very intentional and clear in our process. And in our first meeting, we were able to hear from council as they were able to lay out very clearly what our task is. And as a commission, it was recommended and validated by others that at the beginning of each one of our meetings, that we make it clear what our task, who we are, what our task is, and what guides this process and our commitment. And so I want to share this task for those that either you can speak it in your own words, but we also have, for those that have their notes from last meeting, would just love for us to be able to, and I didn't prep you, so I'm happy to do it all this time, or we can share in it, but to be clear with our fellow constituents who we are and what our task is. So I'll start with the who we are. This commission is made up of your fellow community members and residents. And so each district has representation in addition to at-large representation as well. And so that is who we are. The intent is for us to be a multidisciplinary, cross-functional, and multi-identity team that is being thoughtful about all who make up Kansas City. And so that is who we are. If there's a fellow commissioner that would like to speak about what our task is, I'll open up the floor to anyone who would like to take on that. What's our task as a commission? Our task as a commission, Martin, look, you look like you go for it. You broke it down last time.
I'll take a little bit of the pressure off of you, but our task here is to create, or to redraw the lines for the city council districts of Kansas City, Missouri, keeping in mind all the demographics, whether it be race, socioeconomic, making sure that we're drawing straight lines as much as possible, contiguous districts, and keeping in mind those historical contexts of the districts, as well as the Voting Rights Act, and making sure that there is minority representation in everything that we do as well. I think that'll wrap it up.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. And our commitment is to, and my commitment in particular, as chair of this commission, is to ensure, and I think I heard this also echoed from other commissioners, is to ensure we do this with great intention and with equity in mind. And so with that, we'll move through our agenda. And once again, we invite those of you that are watching us to share any questions, comments, or thoughts, as we will really be able to grow from that. And so the minutes were also shared in the last correspondence that I sent. If there are any revisions or anything that was left out, please be sure to give any feedback for that, so we can make sure. Thank you so much to Melissa and the city team for ensuring that we have all that information. Our next piece is to really talk about a benchmark guide. And so, Melissa, we were able to talk about that a little bit more. Do you have any further insight?
I do not.
Okay. So the request for the benchmark guide is just because we are on a tight schedule, and Mike, I think you mentioned this last time, just really wanting to know what are some key pieces that we want to make sure that we're hitting in particular times. And so Vicki and Clayton Clinton, excuse me, we welcome any insight that you may have on that process. You trying to talk, Vicky? You want me to wait? Okay. I was gonna wait.
Yes, and if I may briefly interject, the primary benchmark as regards to timing is that by December 1st of 2021, we need a map that is collectively voted upon and selected by you all by majority vote. That's the primary benchmark that we have coming from our office for sure.
Okay, thank you so much.
No problem.
I'm also interested in what is the protocol for closed session? And so, are there any particular protocols for that?
That there are. I have engaged our city attorney. He is still conducting some analysis on that as to who exactly can be invited to the closed session. So we should have answers for you all, specific answers for you all by next week's meeting.
Okay. Just a heads up, what I will be interested in, but also interested in other thoughts, if we can embed a closed session that is attached to each meeting so that we can maximize our time together and really begin to move forward.
Absolutely.
Any other considerations? Okay. All right. So thank you for getting us some clarity on that as we move forward. Another piece as part of our quest for transparency and connectedness, have there been any media requests to our commission? Any media requests?
Prior to our first meeting, none since then.
Okay, thank you so much.
Same in my situation, yeah.
Okay,
I would echo that. The only thing, they weren't media requests, but I've had a couple of people reach out about the public information sessions or opportunity to share, meet in different parts of the city and things like that. So it's not media, but as we're committed to that transparency, we've also been getting requests about that as well. So just want to make sure that that's front of mind.
thank you so much. That's going to be really important, and that kind of goes into our next piece. The only other media request has not been external to the city, but from within the city. Beth, who leads communications, has reached out, and so I was able to meet that mark, and so more information and hopefully sight of that will be coming out here soon. All right. Let's see. One of the things that we talked about with the city staff is if there is a particular communication write-up that outlines in some continuity so that as commissioners we can make sure that we have an aligned message. And so I will ask that again, well not again, but I will ask that to be supplied. And then that way that'll give each of us just some clarity. And then of course you all can remix it as needed. Well, not remix it, but honor your own voice as you move through that document. So next I would love to go to Martin, what you broached, and us each going around and talking about those that have reached out and what particular communication or kind of what's at stake, what have they communicated their interest in being. And when I say who has reached out, you know, feel free to honor that in whatever way that means to you, just so that we can have a sight line on who we are hearing from, so we can be just as intentional for those particular communities that we have not heard from, especially as we move into our community engagement. So, Martin?
And please be sure to speak into the mic so we can make sure that city communications can pick up everybody's comment.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
So I'm a part of the Northland Chamber, and so the Northland Chamber is very interested in what's going on and has talked about the opportunity for public comment and held a public forum. And then the rest are just community members, community neighbors, things like that, people who care about their community and their neighborhood and just want more information and some input in the process. And not everyone is from the Northland that I've spoken with either. So that was really encouraging to me that people from other parts of the city also felt comfortable in reaching out and that we're able to build those bridges across the river, because that's what we want to do moving forward as well. And, so those are the folks, the stakeholder groups that I've heard from.
Great, thank you. Others?
Yeah, I've had a good conversation with former city councilman and now Martin City Telegraph writer John Sharp today. He's obviously in the Southland, 6th District, and then just other comments have been through various members of the community.
Thank you, Reed.
My comments or questions have come from some community members and a few organizations like the Citizens Association and the Southtown Alliance folks. And just in general, people, A, wondering about the process, and B, wondering what the effect might be. So whenever we get to the point where we have something to really show and get your teeth into, I think there will be quite a few people who are interested.
Mine has been the same. Listen, various community members from all over. I've heard from people from, I believe, every district. I've heard from people from North, Midtown, yeah, everywhere. And want to know about the community process, have some community input, but also getting suggestions about the lines. We haven't even started looking at it yet, but people want to know where they, and I found it informative and helpful.
Thank you. Pedro?
Yeah, similar to my fellow commissioners, they've come from business interest, you know, representing the 4th District at large. I mean, there's a lot at stake in they perceive in the 4th District with businesses and corporations. What's the true meaning of the boundaries that we'll be looking at? I've had the pleasure of meeting with a group that represents several nonprofit organizations that service the minority populations yesterday, and there's a big interest in their transparency and looking at numbers, looking at the constituents that will be impacted by any boundary changes.
Absolutely. Thank you, Pedro. Chris?
I also spoke with former Councilman Sharp, as well as a lot of other different 6th District community leaders. Mostly just them wanting to be aware that they knew I was appointed and were happy and gave me their 10 cents on what they thought. Not a lot of details. But I did hear something today that I thought was kind of interesting. I didn't know, like, for instance, somebody had pointed out that the Hickman Mills School District is split in half. I did not know that. So that was a concern of somebody had brought that out. And also, too, I was at the Chiefs game on Sunday, and I touched several people's opinions from all over the city there. They grabbed me when they saw me. So that's who I've spoken with.
Thank you. Dr. Hill?
Hey, I was at the Chiefs game and I told someone, I'm watching the Chiefs. No. Just thought I'd joke about that.
That's funny.
But, you know, one of the things that I have been really impressed with by this process is, like many of you, I heard from people that live across the city.
Yeah.
So it was not just about the district that I'm here representing, which is the 5th District, but it was about people that live across our district and how can we do this. Similarly, it was making sure that we can, when possible, keep school districts in the same council district. That was very important to them. I think former Councilman John Sharp probably called all of us. But I had the pleasure of serving with John Sharp, so I wouldn't expect nothing less than a call from him. But I guess the question that I have, followed by who I've talked to around the city, is one, community engagement is super important. I think people understand the impact, and certainly in this season, what this means for our city. So wanting an opportunity before we, you know, finalize some lines, even though I think it's important for us to have a couple of different options before people, that they want to make sure that they're heard. And I heard from, like, are you going to be in our respective districts, all of you, as well as hearing, you know, inviting to an open public where it's multiple districts at stake. So I think that's something we should consider. But I also want to hear from my council people, and not in respect to where the lines will be drawn, because ultimately they are the decision-making body. But I do want to hear about what's important from council districts, about what is council men and women, about what's happening in their district and what's important to them. And so I don't know if that is an opportunity that we can extend across so everyone can hear, or do you all just recommend we meet with our own council representatives? So that's something I'd like to put on the table as a point of discussion.
Thank you. Mike?
Yes, thank you. Similar to Martin, served in the Northland Regional Chamber, so that was one group, and there's many different business leaders that are represented in that. Through that, the Northland Neighborhoods Incorporated was part of the discussion as well, getting some questions regarding process and what the timeline is and kind of where we're at in the process at this current time. And that's been the same inquiry from everyone that I've talked to, is simply just trying to understand what the process is and where we're at in it. And then the North Kansas City School District reached out as well and offered support and in any way that they could, as far as any demographic data or something of that nature. And then also the Platte County Economic Development Council reached out, attended a meeting there, and they had heard that I was appointed, and asked again what the process was and where we were at in that process, and offered to provide any input and feedback and open their membership up as well. As with everyone else, several other individuals have been just asking questions, but nothing material other than just well wishes and support. So.
Right. And mine is the same. Thank you all for leading the way. School districts, a couple of school districts have been able to reach out, Northland and then also here in Center City, which has been really great to hear the perspective of superintendents as they are thinking through what can be great for their students. And then like you all, folks from across districts just really interested. And I think, Dr. Hill, your question about how we want to, and even though I have that after our next thing, I think I'll move it up because it goes with your question about, as you all have had a week now to think about what our approach will be to community engagement. I really want to open up the floor for what that can be. And it can absolutely range from inviting folks to this time, because we know we have a very condensed time schedule. And also we're in the midst of a pandemic. But we really want to be able to explore the range of what that is, in addition to, of course, partnering with our council persons and partnering in attending their ongoing sessions that they have, which we can have that schedule out as well, and the city can support us in that so that we can go to attend those. And I think they're all virtual, correct?
Yes.
So go to attend those virtual pieces, invite people here. But what are some other ideas and ways that we can engage and make sure that we're hearing voice?
Madam Chair, I would ask if the city staff has recommendations on how they see this impact and the change will be when we make district boundary changes in traditional communities that have been underserved, underrepresented. I took a call from someone who is in the homeless services and through the city, and they express that there are funding there, but they just feel like they're not going to be represented well. We may not include them in this conversation, and they have data, and they want to share and help the best we can to make the best decision to support the boundaries that are necessary to be adjusted.
Thank you for that. So organizations that represent the voices of those, and just simply engaging those without home, without shelter. Other community engagement ideas?
Madam Chair, we briefly discussed it at the last meeting, and I think with the timeline, I agree. I want to engage as many folks as possible across the entire city. In the interest of time, I just throw this out as an idea as it was brought up before. I don't wonder if it's not planned public engagement meetings, whether that's virtual or in person. Again, we do have to take into consideration the pandemic and other factors as well. So I wonder if we don't have 3 strategically placed or planned public engagement meetings, inviting folks within the geographic areas that we determine, which I think at one point we talked about one that would be in the northern section of the city, the southern section, and then the Midtown area. And that, I'm not saying that is how we have to do it, but I think in the interest of time, if you try to have too many public engagement meetings, we won't have enough time to do what we need to once we get all the data and feedback. And so that would be one thing I think that we can possibly start the discussion off of, because I do agree with my fellow commissioner in that we want to make sure that we get every organization and service industry out there involved.
Melissa, are you aware if there's any boundaries or restrictions as it relates to in-person connected to the city? Or are all these things, will they have to be virtual? Because I want to keep in mind those that may not have access to broadband. Have low
Absolutely.
to no access.
Absolutely. Well, the city is currently under a mask order. So, of course, any public meetings would have to be compliant with the current pending order. However, if you watched City Hall here recently, we are starting to take much more public comment in person. So, no, there is not a strict requirement that everything has to be completely done virtually.
So we would be able to have and leverage the support of the city to perhaps be able to have some in-person and then also leverage our virtual platform.
Absolutely. And of course, the city has a number of spaces that are a lot more spacious than this that might be easier to accommodate larger numbers of people, which, of course, we would help you in with that administrative support and figuring out an appropriate spot.
Are you suggesting that we have a meeting like in the Northland and one maybe Midtown and one out south? And are you suggesting that we do that first? Or do we do that after we have some maps, or do we do it, you know, I guess simultaneously? I mean, like.
I think that was my initial suggestion. However, it was simply a suggestion, nothing that is immovable, in my opinion. I think that I would agree with your statement or the question that I think we need to have something to take to the group, at least to start the discussion.
Yeah, I would think, I guess it'd be my initial suggestion. I'm flexible, whatever the group consensus is. But I'd like to try to see if we can get much accomplished at one time when we go out to a meeting. Maybe can we have maybe a map or two for them to look at to get some feedback on?
I agree.
And then you know, we do something up north, but but a caveat up north, only if the police department is really going to enforce the mask rule. The last meeting I saw y'all had, they had a committee meeting up there, and they
Yes, sir.
refused to enforce the mask rule. And the people, they had some kind of a subcommittee meeting up there about, I think it was about the mask.
It was about the mask order.
And the police department refused to enforce it, and the people refused to wear masks. I don't think we should participate in any process like that.
Understood.
If we have a meeting up north, we need to make sure those people go out there, you know, obey the law, and we need to enforce the mask rule. But I would like to say we can start maybe having a couple of maps. Maybe it would be good to have like maybe 3 maps or 2 or 3 maps.
Have some
Maybe take 'em
scenarios.
out, get some feedback on them, and then after that, I think after we agree upon a map, or after we come up with a couple of versions that we come up with, you know, maybe have a public hearing too.
Okay, so based upon, so that there won't, you're not saying have like, for instance, a map, have a conversation in Midtown, for instance, and then come back to Midtown with other maps. You're saying in different locations, we might have different maps.
No. I'm trying to
Is
say
that
the
what you're
same-
saying?
No, I think I was saying the same maps, but you know,
Have-
whatever. I mean, I
Go
don't
through
know.
the same map tour
I
in
think
all
we
3
oughta-
districts. and then-
I think we ought to do a couple of maps. We're good to have some feedback. We have some input from the community, you know, before we start that process. You know, maybe next week, maybe we take public comment, then draw a couple, 2 or 3 maps, and then take them out to the community. You know, that's one way to do it. You know.
Other thoughts? Thank you.
Madam Chair, I would, I'm all over this idea of having maps before we go out to the public. And I think it would be a good idea to set a timeline or set an end date for us to have 3 maps completed. And that will, you know, because it's just been my experience that if you give people time, they'll use it all up. So if we give ourselves a concrete deadline, then we can set, from that deadline, we can set the public hearings, public meetings after that. So we can do it simultaneously. We could give ourselves the date today, and then we could schedule the 3 or 4 meetings today as well, because we know when those maps are supposed to be done. And we can make sure that we give ourselves enough time based off of those 3 maps to be able to adjust from the public comment. And probably after we have the meetings on those 3 maps, there would be probably no more going out to the public just for time's sake, but we would still have the website, I believe, that's being set up for people to submit comment. We will still be having these meetings every Wednesday for people to drop things in the chat and have plenty of public comment, but just for the time frame of, we usually get 9 months, now we have 9 weeks. I just think we need to work expeditiously, and a lot of things need to be done simultaneously, and I know everybody up here is very smart and very capable of getting things done succinctly and on time the way we need to, the best for the people that we represent.
Inspirational and strategic. Thank you. So I'm hearing, and thank you, Martin, because this also goes back to our own benchmark guide. So while the city may not have one, what's important is for us to be able to establish this benchmarking guide. Are there any additional thoughts about being able to set a date where we will have at least 3 scenarios, and then by which be able to move out into doing the community engagements in these recommended 3 areas, North, South, and Midtown?
And that kind of depends on what the city, how quickly the city can get them. I mean, we can start, when do you plan on starting drawing maps? Or we start, no, I want to
We'll
start.
be having this conversation today as
Okay,
well, so
well,
we're going to go into it. I just want,
Maps today, I think? Okay, great.
yeah, you all will be able to talk about map scenarios and all that kind of stuff today. But I want us to get a grasp on what we are expecting from one another and what the community can expect from us from community. I know you have thought greatly about scenarios. You're going to be able to talk about scenarios today, but I want us to be just as thoughtful about the community engagement piece. So,
Can I add a piece, Madam
please.
Chair? I agree, setting a timeline of when to have 3 maps. I love the 3 community engagement. The only addition is after we hear the community engagement, we revise maps. I know that the city has the capacity to hold like a hybrid meeting, whereas people that are on Zoom, if we allow a time for public testimony, because we will not be going back out into the public, but still providing a space for comments to be made. So one, people can see like, actually, we did take their information into consideration, but it gives them an ongoing connection point, because there might be things that we might miss as we're trying to run expeditiously toward this December 1st. So that's the only piece that I would add. And if, first of all, thank you to the city for setting up the website and getting that ready to go for us so that we can have ongoing feedback. I appreciate that turnaround. And I also know that it might be a little bit more taxing to add the Zoom piece onto meetings such as this. So in advance, I want to say thank you.
No problem. If one thing COVID has taught us is that we have to be adaptable, so.
Thank you. And we are
Chair.
currently on Zoom now,
Yeah.
just to be clear. Vicki?
I just want to add, I think the model for 3 meetings, physical meetings in an area that people don't have to drive a long way to get to is good. And however we can supplement on the web and with Zoom meetings is great. The one reason I think it's really important is that it gives us a chance to lay some groundwork in the meeting with some background and some understanding of the maps and the growth and how this stuff works, and that, it's a big jigsaw puzzle, so it's not like Northland wants one thing, they got that, and Midtown wants one thing, and South got one thing. It's all has to work together, so they also have to listen to other people.
That's right.
And other people's concerns, because it's not going to be everybody's first choice. The numbers just don't work that way. So I think helping people understand the presentation first by staff, like Kyle did last time, with, what this means and how it works and overall message, and then take some public testimony on that with some initial scenarios, and if it's 3, fine. If 4 makes sense, that's fine. I think our big push to get at least something on paper soon, we should look at and see how many of those make sense, which I think Kyle and his staff will tell us. Because each of those can be modified 20 more times. And we need to be able to get feedback on that also. But I think the 3 meetings spread out physically and then add the virtual stuff on top of that is important. I think it's really important to do a presentation first, so everybody's got the same rules, everybody got the same background, everybody's got the same data.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts, Chris?
Does the staff have a recommendation? I mean, do you have scenarios yet that you guys recommend? Like usually in meetings, the staff recommends. I mean, as the staff individually put any individual thought into it?
We have not, since it's such a political issue. I mean, we've stayed out of it. There's so many things to consider on it. Basically, our role in this is to make sure that the data is out there, that there's a set expectation of those things that you should consider. Definitely appreciate the offer of providing a scenario, but we have not done that at this point.
Yes.
I think they could do it if we asked them to. They have in the past. With school district maps, and y'all helped us do the school district maps. You all did it, and we've done it before also. When we asked for some city map scenarios, giving you some general guidelines as to what the goals are. I believe the last time you said, do a couple, make sure the third and the fifth protect the minority rights, and then adjust the districts accordingly around that, and you all came back with some
Yeah, so
different scenarios. We also gave you one time a suggestion, and I'm going to propose this sometime during the day, or at least throw it out there, see if people want to do it. Give us a map with the least amount of changes that gets the balance out from your perspective.
Yeah.
That protects minority rights and all the other interest groups, keeps neighborhoods together and things like that, and protects the incumbents that you can't move. And then we could talk about doing other things like I really want to give some consideration to changing the configuration, making a radical change that we have not done in the past.
We'll be moving to mapping and scenario as we put a pin in this. What I'm hearing is the three areas. We'll be sure to have some scenarios. I'm not hearing a timeline and date. Hopefully we'll circle back to that once we begin to talk about this, and Cal can give us some estimates of when those things can be done. And then we will continue to engage our virtual platforms, including our website that the city has established, and ensuring that we're getting voices along the way. Did I miss anything? Is that?
I'll
Great.
add just a couple thoughts.
Mhm.
To the extent that we were talking about maybe the first 3 meetings and then some other continued engagement, I guess I'd be curious if we could pull off whether a Zoom presentation by Kyle where we have a discussion about, well, here's the certain school districts in the Northland, here's the certain school districts in the Southland, and maybe it looks like 3 more meetings that are over Zoom, but they're focused on the Southland, focused on the Midtown, focused on the Northland, that have those details with maybe I don't know if it's a second version of what we'll think about map-wise or not, but I guess I'm thinking about that being farther down the process, so I don't want to just have Zoom. I don't want to have just 3 meetings and then we are giving the appearance that we're done.
That we're done.
We're done listening.
Yeah, I think that's an important piece. I'm hearing you say as we move down the road that the meetings that we can then move into can really be focused on what the impact or the intended impact or interest of each of these kind of chunked areas. Maybe, did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, I think it would help, and I think it would help then to get feedback, and it's hard to limit it, if somebody from the Southland is at the Northland specific Zoom, but I think it'd be helpful to have a conversation or a presentation that's focused on that portion and specifically how the districts are changing in that area of focus.
Okay.
I think at some point, and I think we're just gonna have to see where we are,
Yep.
as we go along, because I think that's gonna change the type of meetings we need, because we're gonna need certain kinds of input that we may not have anticipated from some scenario. And it's gonna involve citywide at some point, because you can't satisfy what everybody wants
Right.
In our general areas and not affect somebody else. So it's, it's this continual movement, contiguous thing. So I think if we could ask at the public meetings, just some open-ended questions, not like, do you like this or not like this, but what's your concern if this happened? What do you think some of the impacts would be to other districts if this happened? So that people become pretty well informed and understand that there's got to be a lot of give and take and some compromise and understanding what other people's perspectives are and things that none of us can change.
That's right.
It'd be nice if we could change the entire city boundary because it's so swirly, but we can't do that. So we're working with a complex set of issues that will change. But I think if we ask people generally, what do you like about this? What do you think the problems could be? What else would somebody have to accommodate for you to get this? Then I think we can get a lot of general feedback that's going to help us identify more scenarios in more detail. So at that point, I think we can begin to, then those are going to take some separate meetings also.
Madam Chair?
Northland Chamber, et cetera.
Thank you. All right.
Can I
final
just
thought?
try to throw out a date? I mean, I'm looking at, so I hear like the structure, but just for the 3 maps, I'm thinking if we can at least get 3 maps by our October 6th, that's a Wednesday, that gives us 2 weeks to have 3 maps, then we can do some community engagement in the month of October, whether we decide on evening or Saturday. And then that way we have November,
kickoff.
because we lose a week with Thanksgiving, of course,
Yeah.
right? And people traveling. So that's just a date that I'm
That 2 weeks.
proposing that
And-
we throw out.
Thank you for that, Dr. Hill. And we'll go ahead and move into our mapping scenario pieces. And we'll be sure to finalize any date options once you all share your scenarios, and Cal can give us confirmation, okay, Dr. Hill? But thank you for that starter date. So with that, we want to kick off with our protocol for request. We recognize that there are so many interests and thoughts, and so there are requests that may come all over the place. So between Melissa and Cal, can you give us an overview of that protocol?
Absolutely. The overview is fairly simple. Please funnel all requests to Kyle. He is the man with the plan. He will take care of you all. So yes, please, regardless of where it's coming from, what entity it's coming from, all requests should be forwarded to Kyle.
So you're saying that if council persons have requests of scenarios, that they will send it to Cal?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And then we will, in turn, make sure this group's aware of it. So while we'll likely get more requests for scenarios than staff can handle in the time frame, we'll have to start prioritizing what those were, and we'll work with you guys. And whoever asks the question, asks for a scenario, we'll inform them where they are in the queuing process. And if it's simply we've got 50 requests for scenarios, we'll have to have the conversation, depending on where it came from, who the requester was, on which ones we work through.
Okay. And that's really important for us to hear and know, because we ourselves will have scenarios. So Cal will be receiving all type of requests and scenarios. So this board, this body, will continue to help shape and prioritize the filtering of those scenarios. Okay. So at this point, we'd love to be able to, Cal, do you have any more to share or add before we open up to our commission?
No, other than the starter date, I know you wanted to have that a little later. The only thing I would consider is we probably want to consider us having at least one shot to look at the 3 scenarios twice.
Before we.
So you guys submit one, we bring it in, you guys go, that's not exactly what we wanted. We go back and tweak it, and then at that time, we should be able to generally roll back out.
Okay, so we'll keep that in mind as we settle on a date.
Because likely what you guys are going to say is going to be relatively general to begin with, and we're going to do our best job to accommodate that, considering, minimal change, considering the other jurisdictional boundaries, and then all of the, the other equality issues in there. So it may not look and feel exactly what you had in your mind, and we'll explain why, and if we need to tweak those boundaries, we'll do so.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started with any particular scenario or map questions that our commissioners have. So the floor is open.
Is it okay for us to ask questions of each other, other
Please.
commissioners? Yeah. I don't mind starting off and asking a question of Northland people. To take a look at the current configuration of the first and second and see what kind of thoughts they have about joining the lines east-west as opposed to north-south. Because of various issues, including the growth issues, I've been told by Northlanders that a lot of potential for development, I guess, is in the second district up there, I guess up there in Platte, around the airport area. I mean, I don't know, is that true?
Yes, there is a lot of development going on currently,
there's a lot
and
of, I guess,
there's a lot of
potential.
potential in the second as well,
In both
Is-
districts.
would it
and
be-
the first.
What would be your thoughts about starting the districts at the boundaries, coming south, like the 152, and see if there's 86,000 to get, coming south till you get 86,000 people
Yeah.
in the district?
Yep.
And maybe that lines up around 152 or something like that.
84, give or take, but yeah.
84, okay. Wait,
Yep.
wait,
Cal,
okay.
can you run annotation? Can you do some pointing?
I can try. I'm not seeing on the screen what you guys are seeing, so just bear with me.
Oh, okay.
And if you can't hear me, just let me know. So for those of you that are not familiar with the Northland, KCI Airport, this is our current first district, current second district. These are the current populations with that configuration. One of the main dividing lines for 2 different counties as well. So you got Clay and you got Platte. Platte basically lines up with this line straight up through there. You've got multiple school districts that cross not only not only county bound, or like, they don't cross county boundaries, but they cross multiple jurisdictions too. So you've got quite a few things to deal with. Primarily, majority of the growth over the last 10 years has occurred right in this section, a little bit through here, and then you're likely going to see quite a little bit through here. 152 extends right through there, and then 169 highway runs right through those areas as well.
So I guess what I'm asking is see what the Northlanders think and others think about starting at the boundaries, come south to 84,000, whatever the number is. Or straight across, then come south again for the other 84,000.
Okay.
That's the two full districts.
So
Then they have the other district that crosses the river, and then go, you know.
So just to be
that.
clear, if we were doing it this way, it'd be District 1,
Yeah.
District 2, likely District 4, and I only say that because you already have a portion up there,
Before, right.
and then
And maybe
minimal change through here to make sure we match, and we don't create any disadvantaged areas.
right.
Okay.
And
Yep.
you keep the third and fifth around 60-40, I guess. That's what they were last time.
So you're saying turn the line. Go ahead, Mike.
No, I'm just suggesting that we start up, just come down. Yeah.
Then that would
Right.
turn the line,
It-
right?
Well, when I say turn the line, I mean, you say instead of going this way,
Correct.
turn it this way. Okay, for the visual people, me. Mike?
Well, so I couldn't see the visualization of it, so you're saying keep the first and second district north-south boundary the same?
No,
No,
I think he's
no,
saying turn
no.
it this
I was
way.
saying change them east-west.
So you're saying have the council districts cross Clay and Platte County?
Yeah, so they'd be
across-
horizontal, east to west.
You're horizontal.
Yeah, so,
What would likely be a reasonable spot to look at would be 152, everything north of that, and I don't know the numbers yet, would be first district, 152 to Harvin, you know, somewhere in there would be second district, and then the remainder of however fourth district balances out to 85 would be there as well.
And that'd be it seems to me to be an advantage rather than a disadvantage of being in two counties.
Well,
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing.
I'm sorry, I said it seemed to me it would be an advantage rather than a disadvantage to being in the two counties. But I don't know, you know, you all live up there, I don't know.
The
Well-
question is what's at stake?
I think that, and I appreciate your comments. I think that one of the challenges I might see with that is the Clay County, Platte County, there is different, while it's all the Northland,
Right.
there are different, I guess, opinions between Clay and Platte County. I don't know a different way
There's
to put
different
that.
characteristics between
Yeah.
the two.
I understand, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
let's just look at it, see how it looks out.
I think-
Put it out there on the table to.
I like your ideas of trying to make it more compact. I think that's what we're going to have to do because of the amount of growth that's taking place up there. My opinion, and it's different than yours, but it's to take first and second and move the southern boundary of it, keeping them more of a vertical track, but moving them north. And then, as Kyle suggested, working with the fourth district to enlarge it, keeping it contiguous of where it is right now as far as existing fourth, and then bringing in some of the southern piece of first and second. if
One
that
of the
makes sense.
advantages, I think, of what my proposal is, I think now, and this is anecdotal, I looked at a little bit of it, when we got the data. And again, I told you earlier, one of my goals was to at least give a lot of discussion to and consideration to, trying to improve the opportunities for Latinos to elect a member of the council. It's impossible to put a majority Latino district with the numbers and demographics that we have and the way they're spread out. But, in looking at some of the census tracts, and we look at it closer, there seems to be that if we take that, if we come down that way, you might be able to get a good concentration in part of the fourth,
You're saying underneath
in
the
part of the
glad,
fourth, north of the river,
that's
of
right,
Latinos, that we can put in that way.
underneath
But
that
you won't be able
Gladstone?
to do that.
I think we're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
However, I think instead of first and second being east-west, it would still remain north-south, and then just move both boundaries.
And move the
northward.
fourth.
Because I would agree with you on the fourth district. I think
So
it does give that.
if I might suggest, we may be able to pull that one off both of those off.
That'd be
They're
helpful.
similar enough that, you know, we can either do the horizontal banding for 1 and 2, or we can do District 1 and District 2 following either the Clay Platte divide, and divide's probably the wrong word, the boundary,
Yeah.
as we go forward. and trying to respect the school districts and other things too, if that's something the group wants to consider.
Can I say something about the school districts? Because school districts cross boundaries. I mean, Kansas City School District is in like 4 council districts.
Right.
Outside of the big issue.
Well, right, but it doesn't displace what concerns there may be, which I think is, the question is what's at stake, right? We're just simply curious about what's at stake. So what I'm hearing is that there could be a compilation of what it might look like with moving the line up for 4th District, move it up north, while maintaining the vertical, and then you could also show what Mr. Clayton, Mr. Adams' scenario of the.
Yeah, if that's what the group wants to do, we can keep the 4th generally as far as up as it needs to go, and either do horizontal or vertical on the other 2 districts.
Yeah, I think we should look at that, because that's gonna help everybody understand how many people are where. But the 4th District last time around just became a completely eclectic thing. I mean, it's got downtown, it's got Old Northeast, it's got the west side, north of the river, and part of the southwest corridor in it, and it's, trying to represent all those interests in only one district is an issue, I think. And the more of that goes north of the river, the less of it can help the Hispanic population south of the river on both sides. And you have downtown, midtown, Westport, et cetera. So I think we should look at how far you'd have to push it up, but I don't know that, but I'd also look at other ways for 4 to, they have to shed some votes, right? They have to, and so 1, 2, and 4 all have to shed some votes.
Yeah, on the map up here, it'll show you in the notation what you need to gain, and we've done some preliminary looks at how far
Can't see that. We gotta look
4th
here.
would have to expand north with a minimal change on some estimates, and depending on where you draw it, it basically, if you took it to I-35, that's the split, I-29, I-35. So if you're going to the airport, you go that way. If you're going to Liberty, you go that way. If you take it over to generally Shoto, that's about balances out the 4th District. You would then also have to push 4th District up a little bit.
I like to see the demographics of that, when that Shoto area over there. I've been told that there's a Latino population in there. I don't know.
It's a pretty
It
diverse
is.
community.
Well, I mean, and so I want to be clear in what's being stated, because I was saying that that's what it was, and I wanted to make sure that, because I thought you said no, that isn't. So I wanted, because what?
I said it wasn't, no.
Okay, great. So yeah, I think that, are there any other, because I think that helps, especially Mr. Adams, I agree with you in figuring out how can we support the voice of perhaps the Latino community and possibly being able to have representation, which I think is important, which we've been absent of. And so I'd be
See how
curious.
it comes out if we draw those lines.
That's
If we use
right.
152 as the round going across, I know I disagree with my fellow commissioner on that. We may disagree on that, but let's look at it.
That's okay.
Get some
That's what
input
we're
on
here
it
for.
and see where.
And before we move, if I could interject just a little bit, it's clear that everything's going to move north. I don't think if it's horizontal or if it's vertical, I think that doesn't matter. I think it's clear that 4th District has to move north, and some of the issues that you were talking about, Vicki, where it's wrapped around here and all those things, as it moves north, I think the shape gets better. And the concentration of the Northeast and those groups that are underrepresented will be represented as we capture more of these pieces of the Northland. And so I'm of the opinion of keeping them vertical in the Northland and moving the 4th up, because to me it's pretty much the same thing. That's what's going to have to
I think
happen.
there's probably several different ways 4 could go, regardless of which of those scenarios you do up north and which one 4 picks up, either this way or vertically, to look at. And because I think the way the 6th District got split up last time, difficult for a whole lot of reasons, and that didn't really get solved with pushing just continuing the clockwise thing may not really resolve it either. So I think there's some wiggle room in there to see what those 2 things as a driver does. But I still think we have some complex issues up here, because downtown, whoever has downtown, that's great. But sometimes the neighborhoods that are in that same district don't have the same resources or
That's right.
the same voice for issues, and then wherever it is, it competes with regular neighborhoods. So how that fits in together with the jobs corridor and all that, and then the existing neighborhoods, a lot of which are historic, I think we need to play with that and see if moving it up doesn't make any difference, fine, but, I'm not sure you can capture as much as 6 needs. I don't, we need to see, if you did just
Yeah.
move, if you left everything alone and just moved 6 farther up to catch up, can we just see how far up you'd have to go to do that if you stayed in the same corridor?
Sure.
That's
The other
I
point
like to
that
second on that, moving 6, because I think even if you go horizontal 152, or if you look at the vertical, moving 4 up, 3 is gonna have to come down to protect the
Unless 3
voting.
goes up a little bit.
If 3 goes up a little, I think we have to look at precincts and voting. I mean,
Three goes,
So I think if 3 goes down, then that means 5 is gonna have to shift down into 6. So again, 6 will have to come up to come up to get some of sub-district 4.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that
Shifts
that's
up
a
because
very-
4 is shifting up,
Yes,
right? And
Yes.
then,
Does the
Are
third
you
district
tracking?
have to always go south? I mean,
yes.
like I was just looking at here, like the northeast neighborhood just kind of, is there enough population in the northeast neighborhood that would make up for the 4,000?
can you say that again?
Well, I noticed the northeast neighborhood's in 4th district,
Right.
but it touches the 3rd. It kind of goes around it. I was just wondering if you included the northeast neighborhood in District 3, you wouldn't have to go down and keep pushing the 6th district out of the way.
I think the challenge with,
It's 4.
Madam Chair, if I could, I
Yes.
think the challenge with that is creating the compact and contiguous, because if you're gonna have to shrink 1st and 2nd. And I think you create a lot more, less contiguous boundaries potentially. I mean, I see what you're saying.
I would just look at the 6th district, though. If you look down here at
Yeah,
you
with
can't go any farther south. I mean, you're really gonna split it in half.
I'll ask us to make sure that we're lifting up one conversation at a time, so we can all be aware. Chris?
Oh.
Chris, go ahead, finish.
No, I was just throwing it out that,
Yeah.
to me, just in general, that if you included if the 3rd district didn't always just go south, it went a little north too. That way you're not squeezing the 6th district out.
Yes,
it already goes north to Independence Avenue. I don't know, demographically.
And I do
And it's
understand
down
that.
to 52% African American now. We want to get it back to 60. We need to get it back to 60 to be safe. I think it's complying with the Voting Rights Act. It needs to be 60, 40, or close there too with a voting age population, or for the 3rd and the 5th, because we meet all the parameters there. I think that we need to go south into the 5th, and then the 5th goes south into the 6th to pick up the Hickman Mills and the Ruskin area that were predominantly black, and put that, get them to be concerned about that district being split up. Maybe reconsolidate those areas, and then adjust the 6th accordingly. And I know there's gonna be some resistance, but the 6th is gonna have to go north to do that. I mean, and that's if we're committed to protecting minority voting rights interests. I think we are. I thought we were.
Vicki, did you have, go ahead, Martin, I know you had 2 points, you were.
There was, that I just wanted to throw out to keep in mind is the last time they did the redistricting process, they left the Northland a little bit light by about 5,000, I think, in each district, anticipating that growth. And so with there being the wiggle room for the 10% from the largest district to the smallest, I think that we may want to look at doing that as well going forward because of all of the growth potential and the actual growth that's going on in the Northland. So I just wanted to put that out there and make sure that that's on the table and that folks are aware of that as well as we move forward.
Yeah, I think though that, I think we're gonna be able to see that, Mark, in the, when we analyze the 2 drawings between keeping it vertical or more horizontal. because just thinking about proposed development that's coming, they are gonna grow,
Right.
even if they, so.
Are there other districts in addition to 1 and 2 that have a projected growth?
Will likely grow. So part of the information that we provided last time, and I apologize for not being able to present it, but we included it in the package, was this slide that's up here right now. And what it shows you is what the commission that did it in 2010 tried to do, and Commissioner Rucker suggested that as well. So if you look at it's also in your handout here. I'm going to work off the handouts, and I can't see it. But the average we were trying to hit at that point was around 76,000. And if you look over at what we actually did in the column 210 and the difference from that, we made first, second, and 6 a little light, anticipating that they were going to grow. We thought there'd be a little more growth down in the southeastern portion of the city, and it just didn't happen in Kansas City. It happened outside of the city. It still may occur, but it just didn't at that time. The numbers that are in the light gray column, that shows you what actually happened. So anything that shows up in the red is where we're a little over, and that's how many people we need to lose in order to balance that out. So that kind of just shows you how they handled it at that time. If there's information that you guys want on where growth is occurring, the availability for infill and stuff like that, those are things on a real cursory level we can provide to the group as well. We've got permit information. We can also show you where open and sewered areas generally are located.
Well, that was my question. So my question wasn't where the changes need to happen. I'm saying where's the anticipated development growth, so that we can take in consideration Martin's recommendation. Reed?
I'd be curious for that information, Kyle, particularly in the Southland where we've got Cerner development going on and not really, I don't know what impact that will have, but I'm curious to hear about it.
Well, there's another issue too about future growth, and that is in the next 20 years, the city's gonna get more dense and more populated, than continuing to just spread out, which has a huge impact on infrastructure, et cetera. So growth, District 4 grew, they need to shed almost 6,000 people to be equitable with everybody else, but that's in density, that doesn't, and there's still gonna be more growth and more change. So I think every district's got potential for growth if we can do it right.
If we can.
Some is a whole lot easier and is gonna happen without any help, and some is gonna need some help. But that doesn't change the issue of how many people are represented.
Right.
And I think that trend, is gonna be much stronger by the time next 10 years
I
comes.
just,
Yes.
and I know I can't, and I hope the majority of y'all can't support keeping the Northland light to the detriment of minority voting interests. I mean, that's just something I can't abide.
I just want to make sure that it's very clear that no one is suggesting that
Oh, okay.
by any means.
If I could,
Yes.
Madam Chair, I just had a thought as we were sitting here discussing, and really was the conversation around some of the 5th and 6th, and we talk about, some of the cultural aspects, and then, also you talked about the Cerner development. As I'm sitting here, if we go east-west, and I just want to put this on the table as we're having this discussion, because still go back to the concern there is if you split it by 152, then you have 2 of the largest shopping districts in one district, being Zona Rosa and the Shoal Creek Valley, and that creates, I think, some issue if I were looking at it from that degree. And then also the airport would be, and you would have, right now I think it's adequately represented to be, that vertical line, the way that the Northland has developed in 1 and 2. You would make sure you have a lot of those main cultural centers in the Northland remain in the same districts, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
What difference do you think that would? What's the downside of having 2 major retail centers in one district, which?
Tax base for one.
Everybody can have.
Yeah.
Plaza at downtown, and
Yeah, I just think it's something to consider. I think those are 2 things that people do hold on to. I mean, I think that they're proud of those things within their district, and if that were to change, it's something to be aware of. Much like if we were to take the plaza away from a district. I mean, I think there would be some concern about that.
but the plaza, Westwood, and downtown all in the
They're all in 4.
On the fourth district,
Plaza,
yeah.
the plaza's about a mile away from the southern boundary now.
It's something we might have to consider based off the numbers, the population growth, and the demographics. If we're-
Can you clarify, can you clarify what you mean by what we might need to consider?
You know, as fourth district is being discussed, moving north and making adjustments on the population count to achieve the goal, we have to give up constituents already that are in the fourth district. And where do they come from? There's conversations about how it's straddles the state line and it extends out to 59th Street. If we look at the demographic numbers within south of the plaza to 59th Street, they do not favor opportunities for a minority Latino to be a strong candidate. And I'm not saying because we don't have minority bodies. I think it's the candidate that's going to have to be the one to ultimately get elected. But we must keep that in consideration. And we understand that where the population growth has moved north of the northeast area and into the northland, we look at those maps as well. We look at the voting blocks that we must consider as part of making that election opportunity for a strong candidate to be placed in there to represent our community. And it's not only just a Latino, it's all other non-English proficient immigrant and refugees that are concentrated heavily in the fourth district that we're given hope and opportunities to in the near future. So the economic component of having strong business districts with outside influence does hamper our fourth district somewhat, but we do have a strong base. And I think it'll continue to get stronger based on how we draft these maps for the residential population.
So Pedro, with that, is there a particular scenario that you would like to see crafted to help illustrate?
I found Commissioner Adams' vertical conversation interesting, but I also know the economic side. So we talked about having 2 strong business districts within one council district. I think that's a great place to start in 1 and 2. We know there's growth in there, and we know the fourth has to move. We think that if we run through where the growth is for the Hispanic population, if that's a concern, and I very much appreciate that. All commissioners, please accept my appreciation. We look at what's the strongest opportunity to maintain the social component of services for all those who follow in that LMI category as they economically are starting to grow. That's part of what we're challenged with, is to ensure that there's an inclusive economic opportunity for growth. I fear that if we go vertical across top 1 and 2, there might be that strong economic growth on the 1 versus the aging population in 2, but I think it can be accommodated slightly. Fourth has aging population, aging house stock, aging infrastructure. And
When 4 went up, and, you know, the city actually defines the urban core going up to Vivian Road, so that the stuff that was older in the Northland needs
Got
a lot of work, you know, smaller houses, shorter streets, that kind of thing. That's, that can be sort of the same kinds of issues that everybody through that far south of the river has to deal with as well. So on the Northland, if, you know, right now, both districts cover part of that area. If you went the other way around, you'd get
That's
a
right.
little bit closer to what used to be the old second district, when the Northland just had 1 district. The old second ran across here, which had a strong Hispanic, Latino influence. And I don't remember how far down it came, but it was, I think that included downtown. I think it went to Westport. So when that changed and the Northland was able to get 2 full districts, that's when the clockwise thing was moving around to just keep shifting. And I think what we might look at is whether there's opportunities, because some of those areas need a lot more work than people think they do sometimes.
Sorry.
You know, nothing's all new north of the river, nothing's all bad south of the river. There's a lot of differences in how you can make up for who would have some at least consistent issues to deal with as a council person.
So before I hear from Commissioner Adams and Rucker, I'm curious, Vicki, the scenario that we are building towards, what you just talked about, we'll be able to better understand once that scenario is produced. Is that what I'm
I
hearing?
think so. I think depending on if we did the horizontal thing north of the river and we saw how far you'd have to go to I guess what's left after you do the 152 thing. I don't know if that comes out close or not, kind
Yeah,
of.
we'll see
So-
it here soon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could
And
you
I
achieve
think
the
we
same
see
thing
what
through,
between 2 and 4, or 1 and 4, depending on how you do that.
Because what I'm hearing,
That's where there's some shifting that we need to take a look at.
what I'm hearing and what I believe that Cal is meticulously taking notes on is this horizontal scenario and then this vertical scenario, keeping in mind our racial and ethnic identity populations and keeping those pieces intact, along with, did I also hear moving up the fourth in a way that it may lose one of the major business districts may fall out of fourth? Did I hear that?
No,
No, we're saying still keep that,
yeah.
okay.
I don't think you'd have to cut it in half to do that. I don't think you can get enough people to, I don't think it
Okay.
works out if you're trying to take the whole plaza.
Adams and then Rucker, and no, Commissioner
No, I was
Adams.
just gonna say, Vicki had said something, I was just gonna say, add on to what she had said, that we know for a fact, from history, that the current configuration has not been conducive to Latino opportunities to run for the district. So we certainly gotta look, that's why, another reason why I propose something, kind of a radical change and a radical shift. At least to look at it, consider it, analyze it, get input on it. And then I would like to throw out there also that, and I think it's, it may be a little bit in conflict with what I'm proposing, but I think something we need to consider, and that is giving the staff the direction to take the numbers, what does it have to lose, how much they have to lose, and giving us a map with the least amount of movement, the least amount of change as possible.
Yes,
And have that in the overall,
yes,
and have that in the mix. While I don't favor that approach, because I don't think it addresses my Latino goal, I think at least we have to look at it and consider it.
yes.
And make difference, something that we want to give some consideration to.
Can it make it 4 maps, right? So we do 3
I was
with that
the
one
third
being a
but
steady.
that was gonna be my third one, but it could be a fourth. I don't know.
Well, from my count, that's 3, but what did you say, Dr. Hill?
No, I was saying having that as like a constant, and we still have 3 maps. So
Oh,
like,
you're saying
yeah,
have that just as our static one and then leave room for a third?
Yes.
That does not include
But,
that.
it might work for everyone.
Well, let's see, we're at 3 so far on my count. Rucker?
I was just going to say that I appreciate your comments about the English not being the first language of a lot of folks. And the North Kansas City School District, which is, it's in the first district, there's 114 or 119 different languages spoken at that school. And so as the 4th District does move forward, move north, it's going to encapsulate more of those folks as well. And so I think that's a very good point that you make, and something that's really important to keep in mind. And as we're drawing up these maps, I think that's a really, really good idea, and something that'll include that Hispanic population as well and give them an opportunity for the representation.
So we have 3 map configurations, Cal, by your count.
3, 4, somewhere in there.
We trust you.
On the horizontal band one, just a couple points of clarification on what we think 4th District, how far up it should go. I hear that, Vicki, correct me if I'm wrong, so just that we get as close as we can. We're not wanting to make sure we maintain Plaza in 4 for the most part. Okay, so the
Not most of all of it.
Yeah, I don't think we should be splitting it up. I think that's a big enough fight to
Yep.
come up to 50 points. But I
You
think
could
4
move it
has-
up. I'm
4
sorry,
has
go
to
ahead.
lose almost 6,000 people, correct? Because they grew more than what we're going to divide it into. And I don't know where all those are going to come from, but I think our big conversation is going to be right where Martin was talking about. I think it's the North, 4th, and 3rd 1 and 2, or just 2, or just 1, however we order that, right through here. Because down, you know, we gotta figure out a way for them to, they're gonna lose some people. They're gonna lose people up here. And third needs to gain some, and fifth needs to gain some. So
Right.
there's probably a bunch of different option, A, B, C,
And
D,
six
of what
too.
happens in
And
there.
six.
Agreed.
Well, they all of our southern,
Yeah.
other than fourth. So, Mike and then Kokibia.
Yeah, if I could at some point get just a rundown of what the scenarios are, so I can get them
We're
straight
gonna
in my
close
mind.
out with that.
Okay,
Yeah, I
great,
think
great.
it'll help us all, but we'll close out with that, because I wanna gather these thoughts, because we may, so we can see where we're at. Is that okay?
Yes, absolutely.
All
Thank you.
right, Dr. Hill? No, I was just thinking about the importance of community engagement, because I was thinking since 3, 5, and 6 need to increase, what does, like, the implications of that of 6 with Cerner? Like, what is the future development that could happen there? Just as we start to name when people are showing up, like, it's not just do the maps, right? But it is also, what are the economic development imperatives for you to grow? Because in the reality, when you think about housing shifts or affordable housing or available housing, those communities don't have adequate housing to support growth within them as of yet. So you see this growth continuing in 1 and 2 and 4. So I'm just wondering, you know, as we start thinking about that, 6, I think that 6 is gonna end up coming up. And so what does that do to the 6th district? Because 3rd is gonna have to grow, and I think it's gonna grow down. Into the 5th, I don't see it growing up into the 4th. But I could be wrong. And if you're talking about looking at the precincts and, the demographics.
Right. Well, and that's, I'm sorry, but that is going to be the point of those generative dialogue questions that we've been talking about, asking these key questions to help us understand the impact. Rucker?
I think that it's important that talking about the 3rd not going north, because that will, I think, probably make it tougher for Hispanic representation to be achieved, and that it would make more sense for the 3rd to go south, I believe, just looking at this, because it would dilute the Hispanic voice, but it would maintain the 3rd. So.
Also the African American population as well.
Yeah, but I think African American population going south would probably
Right.
still be okay. It's just the Hispanic population that would be left out. So I think it's probably imperative that we try to keep looking at 3rd going south versus going north.
I think if we're looking at the first 2 options we talked about, which was Northland vertical and Northland horizontal, wherever that bottom ends up, both of them or one of them, is gonna determine, how we solve that
Sure.
problem.
Agree.
Because that could end up,
Right.
I don't know how far you come down to have that work, or either way. But, it may be that somehow in here, this is part of 2 or 1, I guess now. Because these guys have to lose some people.
Correct.
But I think
Mother,
trying to keep these together, I don't know what this would amount to. So I guess that's what I want to see
We're
when we
gonna see
come
it.
back.
Yeah.
To see if that's,
We'll see it for sure.
I think
Please.
Martin's right. If you follow the black population, it's going north, it's going south instead of north. But the population growth for the city is north. So that gives us a little challenge. But theoretically, what I did last time, and that you do the 3rd, went south into the 5th to pick up more African Americans. The 5th went south into the 6th to pick up African Americans. The 6th lost African Americans, and it went west and went further north. And one of the calories of that, and I think it's something we have to live with now, is that Brookside was split.
Yeah.
Because the 6th district comes all the way down to 59th Street now. Because the 6th district has lost population too this time, it's gonna probably have to come further north to maybe 55th Street. But certainly not to the plaza, I hope not.
you've got about a mile and a half in there to see
How densely?
how many you'd pick up if you just came to the
How
end of
densely
the
is it
plaza.
populated? But they can figure that out.
I don't know if that's
As
enough.
I was saying, I would think you got some wiggle room between 59th and, let's say, 50th Street.
Yep.
Because it's still considered kind of that War Parkway,
Right.
Brookside area right there.
Maybe 51st, maybe 52nd right there at UMKC.
So likely the consideration is how far to the west can you take 3rd and 5th districts in order to catch that population?
I don't think we're comfortable going west and shoots, unfortunately. I hate to say that.
So,
but
so that will
They're
make
not-
the
not
math much
comfortable
more
going-
challenging right
I
there.
know, but we're not, I mean, it's just to protect our voting right, I mean, we just,
No, these are all good things for me to know.
Yeah. And Cal, I wanna turn it to you for other points of clarification that can help you refine what you've heard. And then if you can say that back to us so we can be clear on what the scenarios are.
I'll do my best. As we were talking, we kind of went round robin a little bit and then a little scattershot. So as I get to something that doesn't follow what this group suggested, we'll go that direction. So I'm going to start with the easy one, which was minimal change. So we're going to produce one which, as somebody suggested, is probably a really good baseline. We may love it, we may hate it. Either way, we'll do that minimal change. We'll follow as close as we can the parameters of what a good redistricting process looks like. Minimal change, compact, contiguous, making sure we're maintaining as many people in their districts as they can, while maintaining strong voting presence for all groups of people. The next one is going to be, and this will be scenario one, it's the first one that came out. It's looking at horizontal banding of the Northland from 1st, 2nd, and then 4th district, however far up that needs to go. Making sure that we maintain the plaza in one of the districts, hopefully 4th, and not going past Troost as the east-west boundary line. And then the 3rd is basically that same thing with the different breakup of the Northland districts or the 1st and 2nd districts, making that more vertical versus horizontal.
just, I was gonna make sure you understand what I'm talking about. So I'm starting at the boundaries, the city limits, coming down to pick up the 84,000 people you gotta have. Hopefully, hopefully that's close to 152 as possible. I'm just thinking the 152 would be a good dividing line.
Yeah.
And then coming down with another district to pick up the other 84,000 that you need. Same with a vertical, with a east-west line. And then coming down,
So
and then when you get down to,
1st district,
yeah, right, second district,
wherever
right,
that goes,
and then fourth, whatever that is,
Fourth.
yeah, whatever that, right.
as close as we can, and then,
Right, but
and apologize
There
for
you
people
go.
that are on Zoom, and then 3rd and 5th.
yeah, pick the north south, that means north south.
South, not west.
The new numbers you need, yes, that's what I'm talking about, yeah.
So you're saying pull 3rd district down instead of going to west?
Coming down,
So likely the challenges you're
Because
gonna
I saw
run
his
into
hand
is
go west.
I
this
know.
portion, right, those three, that portion of the city,
Maintain.
not what they are currently, but what the makeup of the population is, that's gonna be the
The challenge.
big conversation that this
Yeah.
group
Because
will have.
you're gonna have to do that, you're gonna have to come, because you can't go west of Truth. You're gonna have to come south into the 5th. 5th is gonna have to come into the 6th, and the 6th is gonna have to go north, but how far north they have to go is gonna be the challenge, I think.
So there's a couple different ways we can bring that back to you as well. We
Okay.
can draw it as the group wants, and we'll show you how far out of balance that might be, and then we can start to erode boundaries to kind of work it through. Or we can take a shot at it, balancing it, but it's likely going to create boundaries that most of us aren't terribly happy with. And we'll follow whichever direction the commission wants us to go.
It would help us understand how many people,
Yeah.
I mean, once you start doing that, we'll be able to understand that's 2,000 people if you come over here. And I mean, I don't think any of us have to agree to that. It would help us a lot to see what that
Well, it'd be
means.
good for them to get as close to a balance as you can, wouldn't it? Be good to get-
Yeah, and we'll do that, but the question becomes, is balance better than wanting to set an understanding of how far we have to go one way or the other, and we can do it
What
either
is that?
direction. Yeah.
So we can tweak it along, like precincts and different things, and on the margin, maybe, if it's close.
I have a question about District 1. On the vertical, leaving it vertical the way it is now, and between Clay and Platt. And you have to lose almost 8,000 people out of there to be even.
That is correct.
And so, if we left it vertical, where did those guys come from? They just have to come from here, from the south, from south of
Yeah,
Gladstone?
more than likely, and I would be speaking off of,
It'd be the Shoto. It'd be that Shoto area, I think, is where you would,
East of Shoto's what you're.
yeah, on the map, it's probably right in this area, right here, and we could do it
Yep.
whatever makes the most sense. The North Kansas City School District runs runs straight up and down here. Liberty is on this side. You've also got like the county boundaries as well. There's some pretty hard dividing lines, such as arterial streets that wouldn't divide neighborhoods. So there's some relatively reasonable spots to draw that boundary.
Part of the issue is where the boundaries is not where a lot of people are. So, you know, you can't pick up a bunch of people in some of these areas because there aren't enough people
Well,
there in the first place.
Well, that's like,
That's kind of
yeah.
where leaving 1 and 2 kind of light with the anticipated development and growth makes more sense. And it kind of helps out with the whole piecing the puzzle together as well.
I think we have to think about growth everywhere if we're gonna do that.
And I think it's very important to think about growth everywhere, but I also do think that it's important to look at the numbers that we've got about where the growth is going on right now and where it's projected and those kinds of things. But I very
The
simply
last time,
what you're
am I
saying.
explaining this right? 1 and 2 came out with less population than the other districts.
By about 5,000.
1, 2, and 6 did.
Came out low.
Yeah. 1, 2, and 6 were, 1 was 3% less, 2 was 2.6% less, and 6 was 1.7.
We didn't anticipate the big growth downtown in Ford.
So the
That's the big,
Yeah,
that's
so
the big change.
streetcar and, you know, repopulation of, and redensification of downtown was stuff that wasn't, you know,
6 didn't do what it was
Right.
anticipated to do.
But the way that worked out is that we left that for growth, but we didn't make up all that growth, right? We didn't meet that.
Well, the Northland exceeded it.
Yeah, and
yeah, so the,
6 did not.
if you're looking at first and second, they were 3% shy, and as of right now, they're 9 heavy for first district. And 2 was 2.6% shy, and they're 5.3 heavy now.
So that
Percentage-wise.
supports that growth argument and would, I think, again, help kind of piece this puzzle together by leaving them light.
While still supporting the Hispanic vote.
Correct.
Right.
I think it's a fact, I think growth's a factor we consider, but, you know, we also gotta look at the other issues like equity and
Absolutely.
fair representation.
And
Well, yeah, but that's what that is saying, is that that'll move that up. And the point of this whole exercise is to have these scenarios so that we can better see it, and then we can monitor and adjust along the way. This has been a very robust conversation, and I want to make sure that as we close out, Cal, you have the information that you need.
Yeah, I believe we're in a good spot. We'll bring stuff back, and it'll be a relationship between us to make sure that we've matched what you anticipated, and we'll explain why we may or may not have been able to hit certain things, and we'll work through that.
Well, and if something is obvious once you draw those up that we ought to look at, and it's not that hard to tack it on or move it around or something, I think we'd appreciate you just bring those and throw them out there also.
Yeah.
So we could see if that made any difference.
I trust that Cal will be able to do that. We're going to hear a lot of his voice.
Yeah, the luxury, once again, that we had in the past was a lot of times to get it perfect. We'll just have to we'll have to do a lot of communication, and we're more than willing to do that. If you guys have questions, please reach out. We'll make sure we are as attentive as we can be.
I'd like,
Put draft on everything.
yes, everything is good. That's important for us to understand and communicate. I would like to check in. Pedro, did you have any additional thoughts or considerations as we close out our time?
You know, I just roughly ran some numbers using the maps that you showed. If, we talk about 59th, street as the boundaries for southern boundaries of 4th and 6th district. Moving it to 55th Street, we gained 3,700. 6th would gain 3,700. And using 55th Street as a dividing line and doesn't divide neighborhoods. And so I think we're not far off from what we're in this conversation of how we can make these boundaries move. Learning more about the the lack of economic growth in the 6th district was kind of an education for me today to see the population and economic growth. So, thank you.
No, thank you. Chris?
Just my couple comments. kind of repeating myself a little bit, but I think we could go farther than 55th Street towards the plaza and still keep the plaza in that neighborhood. I live right around there. I think most people consider 52nd Street or so, you're closer to the 59th area. I think we could go farther north if we had to.
I think we have to be a little careful about that because of the specific neighborhoods that are in
Right,
there.
to
And what's
understand
been going on there lately.
I understand
UKC's got a bunch
Yeah,
of
the
issues
other,
that affect that. And
The other thing is too, and I'm not saying I'm supporting this, I'm just like looking at this if I didn't know any of the demographics of it, but it looks like if the 5th District moves down any farther, it's almost gonna have to take over, I don't know what you call it, but the whole leg of the city, you know?
Where's that at?
The boot down there?
Yeah, so like the right, I mean, is the 5th eventually just gonna take this right boot over, you know? And is that a scenario that
Oh,
would
that,
be
About
popular
Longview.
with anybody?
what,
I'm not-
24th Ward, that 24th Ward over?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's what I support, I just kind of throwing that as a scenario out, what would that look like, you know?
No,
Oh, the
This piece here.
That part right there. Yes.
I don't think you
It
can do
would
that
take
and
the
keep
right
it,
boot.
I don't think you can keep the minority population.
Right,
I
that
think
may-
that we
that may
got
be.
some legal issues, I mean, I don't think it's that big of a deal, but
That may
I think
be.
one of
I'm
our
just throwing it out.
guidelines is also we have to protect the
The
minority.
voting rights.
I think the population of the 3rd and 5th meet the guidelines and meet the threshold for protection from the voting rights, right? Because we live together and we vote in a certain way, we vote in a block, like, so we need to protect that. And I think to do that, we have to, generally what we used before has been a 60, kind of a 60-40 guideline. I don't know if you can do that. That 24th Ward is majority white ward, if I remember correctly. And I
It's
don't know,
the
you put all
red
that,
area
I think you can make it by just picking up the Ruskin and Hickman areas that were split off last time. And I think we consolidate those back together in the 5th. I think that may be sufficient. I don't know. He'll know when they start drawing the lines. They have
I
the
was just
numbers.
throwing it out, I'm not
Yeah.
arguing either way.
I don't think there'll be much community support for the 5th District going all the way out to the Cass County border.
I'm just,
I
I'm
do
looking
wanna
at
make-
it eventually that 6th District is gonna get cut, that leg's gonna get cut off, you know, that 6th District won't be contiguous, that's what I'm just trying to throw that out, but it's just a thought.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see.
Kokithia?
No, I was gonna ask, Clint, are you thinking Blue Ridge or Longview? Or just in terms of when you dropping down? And
Let
from
me
the
see, I
5th,
looked at it the other day. Let me look at the map.
I can
The
see
bigger map.
either one of those to keep from having to absorb the boot, because I think that is gonna be very important to the 6th district.
I was looking at the,
But, in any case, I'll summarize so we can move to the next commissioner by saying, I'm really glad that we're at this point today. I mean, I think we have very little variations between the 3 maps, maybe 4, that we've suggested. I think we have kind of like a North Star of minimal change. And I think that everyone around the table has been very agreeable with thinking about how do we keep neighborhoods together, how do we protect voting rights. So I'm extremely happy with the 3 maps that Kyle has, reported back to us. I'm just eager to set a date for us to have those
We're gonna
dates
get
so
there.
that we can do the community engagement. That's all I would say.
That's my commitment, we're gonna get there. Once we hear, thoughts, then we'll close out with our dates. Mike?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think for my purpose, again, I don't want to go through the entire repetitive statements that I made before, but I am encouraged in the conversation today. I think that we've actually made some pretty good progress for our first meeting, and I'm extremely thrilled with that. I think we got some ideas to look at, and we'll see what works. So it is, to Vicky's point, going to be just putting it out there and seeing what the differences, different boundaries bring as far as population. Willing to look at all of those. Shared my concerns on some of them, but again, willing to look at them and see what that looks like. I don't have any additional comments at this point in time. I think I'm very pleased.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Martin?
To alleviate repetitiveness, I would just like to echo what everyone else has said. I appreciate the dialogue here today. I think it's been really good, and I'm very eager to see the maps that are produced by the city and to go forward from there, and also to get some concrete dates set on the calendar so we can continue to move forward with the process.
Date's coming. Reed?
Yeah, I won't rehash the questions that Chris and Dr. Hill had, but I am curious what, you know, if we talk about the third coming south, the fifth coming south, but it can't be this area, then what area is it? We heard last time, we heard last time just about a few, you know, the sixth district being unhappy with the last redistricting, how that went, and I'm curious to know more about where those blocks or neighborhoods or groups are and how this would impact, and get their feedback too on that map.
Thank you. Vicki?
No, I think this has been a lot of progress, and that's great, because this is gonna take a lot more of these. But I think everybody agrees on some baseline stuff that's really important, and that we convey that when we go out to the public to make it just real clear why you can't do some things, but you could play around with some other things. So I think the more informed everybody is on this, the more people understand what's involved, and I think this has been a really helpful meeting, I think.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's a good meeting. I think we made some progress. With respect to the sixth district, the question you raised, I think we might be able to pick it up. I don't know. We'll look at the numbers a little bit more. Around the Hickman, Ruskin area, you put that into the, it's in the 6th now, you put that into the 5th. That's pretty densely populated out there, heavily African American. The area, the neighborhoods around Grandview, around there, those wards and precincts out there, you pick that up. And then you pick it up on the, and then you make it up on the north end over in the 6th district. I don't know if we have to go further down as Chris suggested, go down to 52nd. I think you might be able to do it by going to 55th maybe. I don't know if Vicki will feel about that, because you don't want to pick those, that Army Hills over there, Army
Puts me
Field.
a half block out of my own district.
Oh, okay, we don't want to do that.
I
But
think
you
we
know,
should
the
look
Army,
at all of that.
but those neighborhoods over there, are that Army Hills, Army Fields, I don't know what it is, in the Brookside area.
There's a lot,
So,
yeah.
so I think there's a way you can do it without being not disruptive. I'm also gonna be interested to see the map you have with the least amount of disruption.
Yes, please read.
I forgot to. I had asked about where incumbents currently are, their residences, and I don't
Right.
think we've seen that yet. And understand that's probably not going to be public, but if we can get that shared with us.
It's public information, it's where they live.
Okay. I haven't done the research. I haven't done the research. I
So-
need an associate to do that, I guess.
We usually do put that
Yes.
information on the map, so we don't make a big deal about it, but it's on there. Everybody generally wants to know,
Okay.
you know, when we talk about minimum change, that's
This place.
one of the things we
Some
shoot
are,
for.
but I don't know where
Yeah.
everybody
Right,
is.
right.
It happened last time when Scott Wagner had to move.
Nobody had to move, but he wasn't in California.
So I'm hearing that, you know, as we've talked about the considerations, just making sure, Cal, that that is at least pointed out as we provide these, and we can keep that in mind. I'll hold my comments in closing and want to transition to our dates. And so, Kyle, we ready? I'm excited because I agree. This has been very productive, and this is a key measure of how we're moving forward. And so, Kyle, as you think about you and your team and your readiness to bring those back to us, will that be by next Wednesday?
We'll do our best to have, if not all three, at least two of them for you for next Wednesday. And if we can get all three, that's great. But I anticipate that being, like I said, at least two, probably three.
Okay. And as advised, that if those maps are able to be brought back to us by next Wednesday, that we get a time to first look at them and play around with them, and maybe even that takes us, I think the recommendation was 2 meetings to play around with, or
Yeah,
at least
so
one?
one where we bring it back and you tell us how far off we are, and then we take that back and correct it.
That's right. And so that then leads us to, so today is the 15th, so the 22nd, so the 29th. We should be closer. We should be at a point where we would have looked at these scenarios and given feedback, and then the 29th, we get to see that again. Which means that we could be available to share with community by the October 6th or 13th.
Well, if we did the 3 meetings in the same week, so that it's all, I mean, that's a lot for us, but that's, then everybody's got the same information at the same time. We could shoot for the first week in October for all 3 meetings. And then we'd have time after that to start on our second round of,
Scenarios.
yeah. So
So the week of the 4th for the community meetings?
look at maybe Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday. Wednesday's church night sometimes, so.
I hear a birthday is coming up on October 5th. I don't know who that is, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm
Definitely isn't me. But happy birthday, Dr. Hill.
How about that? Y'all might lose me on the 5th.
Happy
That's-
birthday, Dr. Hill.
That's no shade to any district, whoever we're visiting.
If we went to the next week, would we have enough time to get done, you think?
So we're looking at the week of the 4th and the week of the 11th. Is there a more attractive week? Let's think about it strategically as far as what it does to our process.
Right.
What I love about the week of the 4th is that it gives us, we can maximize our time, as Vicki talked about, and then come back and be ready to move into our second round of scenarios by that 13th. That then gives us, because we're also wanting to meet another benchmark before Thanksgiving, of course, but be able to meet that benchmark and still have some time that we're meeting, because we know that the week of the 22nd, we won't meet. So I would love for us, so if we can meet that week of October 4th, as far as the community engagement piece, and that can likely give our partners in the city 2.5 weeks to be able to publicize.
Absolutely.
Is that
And so, of course, we can figure out space and logistics and making sure Channel 2 is there. However, we're going to have to lean on you all to decide exactly what representation you want at these various meetings.
I think
So,
you just invite anybody.
anybody and
just
everybody?
have it in 3 different parts of the city?
Got it.
That's
Okay.
what I'm
Let
hearing.
people know it's the same meeting, so they don't have to go to all 3.
That's right.
Anybody can go to anyone, and they'll probably go to the one closest.
And I guess I meant if there's any particular organizations that you want to extend an invitation to, instead of just, blasting it to the general public. I know that you all have mentioned that you wanted to hear from some particular community groups. So just try to keep that in mind. We are more than happy to do that outreach for you all, but just try to start brainstorming on that. But if it's decided that we're shooting for the week of October 4th, we can definitely make that happen.
We could even go to the 11th and 12th if we had to for 2 of them, 1 or 2 of them, if we can't get them all in on it.
Right. Well, ideally, if we can meet this mark the week of the 4th, that keeps us in motion on the 13th. Are there any objections? I want to be clear.
I do have a serious objection, though.
Please.
Well, or just a consideration. If we get 2 maps back on the 22nd, if we get all 3, that's fine. If we get 2, the 29th and the 6th would give us opportunity to not only solidify our maps, but we need to be very structured in how these public meetings are gonna go. I mean, what's the presentation like on the front end, and then rolling out the maps and making sure that we have all the information in the handout. Also, I would just encourage us to have a Saturday meeting. I hate Saturday meetings, but I want to be mindful as a person with a young kid. I have a 2nd grader. Those nights, we're talking about a 6 to 8 or a 5:30, right? So just want to be mindful about when we talk about community representation, that we're thinking through families and that dinner time and providing that option on a Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely, with the intention of that. I think that in consideration, other considerations, thank you, Dr. Hill. Okay. I think that the things that you brought out can possibly be met in that piece, and then that'll still get us on track on the 13th. On the 22nd, we'll be able to review them. The 29th, be able to review once again, and possibly be able to present a layout for the meeting for you all to be able to respond to and give feedback to as well. And so that will be our goal, is to be able to think through what the flow. And also I'll be asking you all to think about what are some of those generative dialogue questions, so that we can get them as confirmed as possible on the 29th, so we can be prepared for the week of the 4th. And keeping in mind that we could definitely have a session on the 9th, which would be that Saturday. Are there any particular days?
I would say the 9th, I'll be out of town, but that doesn't, in our Zoom society, it doesn't necessarily stop me from being on Zoom, provided it's in the morning and doesn't interfere with my friend's wedding that evening. So I'm traveling for a wedding, but
I'll be out
otherwise,
of town that week, that day as well.
The 9th?
Yeah. Saturdays are just personally are super difficult for me. I've got 4
Me as
children, and I'm taking them all over town. They got sporting events. We travel. I do a lot of traveling on the weekends, but maybe I could attend by Zoom.
Yeah.
I do have a question. Would the 2nd be a possibility for you all? Or do you think that's too quick of a turnaround from the 29th, finalizing, and then, of course, knowing that the 29th, that's when we're going to be setting kind of the strategy for the public meeting?
I'm amenable to that. I think the sooner the better.
Yeah.
We can get the map. I mean, if they can have all 3 by then, can you have, and I was suggesting with regard to that too, that if they're gonna do just 2 maps, can they do the 2 maps with the Northland configurations? With those 2, make those a priority?
So
We only gonna have 2 next week.
the Northland change, or the Northland ones are probably, I wouldn't say the same map, but they're pretty easy to, yeah, but they're pretty easy if you balance the rest of the stuff.
Yeah, the other one is just the baseline minimal
The other
change.
one just make minimal changes, so.
Yeah.
I mean, if we only have 2, I wanna see those 2.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm hearing you prioritizing if there needs to be 2. Although I'm very hopeful that all 3 can be, but I want to honor Melissa's question and then also the conflict. If October 2nd is an option, that perhaps that is the kickoff. I agree, as a parent with an older child, weekends are always tournament, something, baseball, something. So, but
he said he'd
it
be
is
in town on
important
the
that we
2nd,
have a
right?
Saturday. Excuse me?
Did he say he'd be in town on the 2nd?
Yeah, we're talking about the 2nd as an
Yeah.
option.
If we make changes here on the 29th, do you have time to change anything by the 2nd, 2 days later?
Probably not, if they're dramatic.
Yeah, so we would anticipate that some of the largest changes would happen after our review from the 22nd, and then he will bring them back. The team will bring it back on the 29th, and then we'll see if there's any minimal tweaks. But there could be larger ones. But the 2nd is just a question we want to honor from Melissa.
If he'll be in town, and then you'll be in town too.
Okay?
Yeah.
So,
Oh, no, I was going to say, because if we start on the 2nd, I am a fellow Libra, so I'm sensitive to the 5th.
Thank you.
Maybe we can do the 4th and then meet on the 6th and have a 3rd community meeting on the 7th.
Well, I think we gotta do all 3 before we take any other stuff.
Understood. Understood. So maybe the 2nd, 4th, and 6th.
For the hearings?
I'm with you.
Yeah, for the meetings.
We're gonna meet on Wednesday,
meet on the
right?
6th,
So
yeah.
it'd be Saturday, Monday, and Tuesday night.
yeah, ideally, we would have, if we're going to launch them before, we
Understood.
could leverage the 6th. I mean, be able to have information and content to debrief on the 6th.
Madam Chair, the 5th wouldn't work for me. I've got some family obligations that evening, and I don't think I'd be able to participate by Zoom either on the 5th.
I thought we were just trying to meet like once a week, aren't we?
No, we're talking about the community
Oh, yeah.
engagement.
Are we opposed to making the 6th? I mean, it's our meeting and a community engagement meeting.
I'm not
Right.
opposed to it.
That's what I anticipated. I thought we'd do the public hearings
So we
on
do
regular meeting days, except I like the suggestion of having a meeting on Saturday.
the Saturday.
We would have a meeting on a Saturday and an off day that would not be the commission day. I'm open to, of course, leveraging the 6th as a community hearing day, but there would be two additional days that you would be giving your time. So it's all appreciated. Mike?
Question, on the 2nd, what time would be meeting? Because I do have an evening engagement.
I would,
Saturday.
I would think it would be in the afternoon or morning.
Okay.
Maybe late
Mid-morning.
morning,
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
10 or 11.
Yeah, mid-morning.
So we're talking about 10 or 11?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So at 10 o'clock, October 2nd at 10 a.m. Are these typically 2 hours? Or an hour? What are we thinking?
I think that is up to you all, understanding that, there may be some members from the public, depending on how long the meeting runs, that might not have an opportunity to speak if we strictly adhere to a time constraint. But 2 hours sounds like a reasonable benchmark, and understanding if you guys do want to extend it based on the attendance at the particular meeting, you can do so.
I think if we tell them 10 to 12, they'll have an idea, and for me, I I'd be willing to wait after the meeting if other people have questions or
Absolutely.
something. I'm happy to.
Perfect.
And we could limit public comment to
Absolutely.
4 minutes or so to try to give the most people the opportunity to speak in those 2 hours as well, respecting everyone's Saturdays and family time and things like that.
Absolutely. Usually we provide about 2 minutes during council sessions. That kind of gives it, 2 minutes is a long time to speak. You would think that it's not that long, but you can definitely accomplish a lot in 2 minutes.
So then on October 4th, which is a Monday, are we looking, as we think about families and folks transitioning from one thing to the next, are we looking at a 6 or a 5:30? And is childcare available? How does the city support that as we think about all family needs?
I do not believe that there is a child care support for any facet, whether that be you all or people from the public that have a desire to attend the meeting. Unfortunately, I don't think that we can provide that service.
Okay.
In the past, I think some choices are try and capture people after work before they go home and they don't want to come back out. Or wait till 7 so you can feed your kids and get out to a meeting if you want. And we've had people have kids bring their homework. We've also tried to provide childcare once in a while. It's difficult to do.
Perhaps we can partner.
But
So-
one of those 2 times is
So I'm hearing,
5:30?
yeah, I have 5:30 to 7:30. And
okay or it doesn't matter.
once again, if we did a span, maybe some people are going home and come in, they can still catch it.
Maybe we can get at have you guys ever had it like at a community center? I don't know.
Well, we
The
can,
meeting
we'll,
at a community center where
yeah.
there's an open gym for people who got kids.
yeah, that's my intention as we think about who we partner with or where these locations might be. If we can take that in consideration, we want to make sure that families are welcomed and accommodated.
Oh, sorry, Madam Chair. Translation, I mean, do we have devices? But I think that that's important.
Well, and sign language as well.
Absolutely. We will look into both of those.
Yep. So let's finish this out for the 6th. So are there any particular parameters? It would be great if we could leverage this designated time to be able to have a meeting, but simply move the location.
Absolutely.
So that would be 4 to 6. Are we okay with that, or do we think we need to shift that time on the 6th?
Madam Chair, do you think we can meet from 4 to 5:30 and then have a 5:30 to 7, like the same time? That way we still have an hour or even 30, 45 minutes on the front end. If we leverage the 6 for a community meeting.
Well, I would like to throw that out to all of you all as you are volunteering your time for this. So I am open to discussion. Pedro?
Madam Chair, I would hope if we can understand what the city's going to place on the redistricting webpage, that could be a tool that we can utilize, whether it's a place they can post comments, concerns, that we could use our time to address before we have these meetings. If we're going to do that, I think if that tool is going to be there, what's going to be on there, and how effective can we use it? If you have an idea, you can just briefly share what.
Absolutely, yes. The clerk is setting up a website where people from the public can submit any form of comment that they want in narrative form. They will not be prompted by particular questions, similar to like the Board of Police Commissioners. If any of you have watched those meetings, they get emails that are 1 paragraph all the way up to about 7 paragraphs. So it's all dependent on what the particular constituent wants to submit. Open-ended style.
So Pedro, I want to make sure that I'm connecting your comment to.
Just try to connect my busy schedule with your
Yes.
busy schedule in my brain to be effective in how we're going to meet these timelines.
It is indeed a task.
Yes, it is.
I want to
So I
acknowledge
think if
that.
the page is up, we can at least hear some early feedback from those who want to participate early often.
Yes, we will have several channels, but I think that it is important, and as we have had some consensus around having these 3 in-person times, recognizing once again that it is an additional 4 to 6 hours of your time, at least 4. But our goal right now is to close out with this October 6th time, which is our existing schedule. So you already have 4 to 6. My question is, do you want to have the community meeting during that time, or is it better for the community for us to adjust that time on that day and we can do, once again, another 5:30 to 7:30?
I think we need to do an evening to accommodate most people. 4 o'clock, we're gonna get a lot of pushback on for people who can't leave work or
Okay.
kids are, get out at 3:30 or 4. So I think pushing it back, and I don't mind if we have an hour meeting before we do that at the same place we're doing it, if we
Yes.
want to, just to touch base.
To clarify my answer, I don't mind the hour meeting before, but I'd like to have some collected data back from the community to have a conversation around it. I mean, we're doing a great job, and I appreciate it, but I'd like to now start hearing some feedback. I think we'll hear it more frequently.
While I think it's important for us to meet and maintain our continuity, it is important to me that we hear from others before we get back and begin to dissect. And so I'd be interested in what are some of the key things that you all will anticipate that you may want to get into on the 6th if you still want to maintain the meeting time. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, that was along the same train of thought that I was just having. And I feel like we're going to be somewhat incomplete in our data collection if we meet before that 3rd meeting. And I'm being sensitive to everyone's family life and commitments, but I wonder if we shouldn't have our commission meeting either after that meeting or the following day when we can process the information that we gather at that 3rd community meeting, just because I think we're gonna have the meeting before our 3rd meeting and not have all the information
Right.
at our disposal to be able to consider as we want to have a collective discussion.
I'm sensitive to that as well, and wouldn't necessarily think that we would need to meet again the week of the 4th, but we would instead pick it back up on the 13th. As many of you all stated, I think that today's meeting is a really great sign of hope for me about how we can talk through and maximize our time. And so I'm hearing October 2nd, which is a Saturday, from 10 to 12. October 4th, which is a Monday, from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. And then Wednesday, in love of all the Libras, moving to Wednesday, October the 6th, from 5:30 to 7:30, that our community sessions will take place. We will work with the city team to determine location in ensuring that we're able to honor a space that can be in the north, space in the Midtown area, and then a space in the south.
Fantastic. That was going to be my follow-up question. I just want to make sure I had those 3 regions correct.
And we will determine which location on which dates based upon the city. We'll leave that flexibility for you all as you're working with partners and locations.
Thank you.
You can navigate that. We will then pick up our October 13th meeting at our regular time of 4 to 6 as we move into really being able to debrief and dissect the community conversation and still move towards scenarios.
Can we get a commitment from the mayor and the council or from the police department that they're gonna enforce the mask rules,
Absolutely.
particularly up north?
Thank you. I think that's a really great consideration, and thank you for bringing it up earlier. I know that Melissa has taken a note, and so have I. So that'll be really key in all of our parts of the town, especially where they have been challenged.
Absolutely.
They're just openly defiant up there. It's inexcusable.
All right. So yes, ma'am.
Just 2 questions. As people are leaving their comments, I know it's